Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama sci-fi movie called Tang. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in the futuristic city of Hokkaido, Japan, where AI has evolved to a point that humans and robots coexist seamlessly. We then meet Ken Kasugai, an unemployed man who spends most of his time playing video games. One morning, Ken is in the middle of a game when his wife, Emi, arrives to interrupt him. She informs him that they have a strange robot in their backyard and asks him to get rid of it. However, Ken doesn't care and continues playing his game, which angers Emi. She scolds him for not having a job and refusing to help with the basic housework. Frustrated, she inquires about the job interview he had yesterday, but Ken avoids the question and leaves the house. He goes out to the backyard and finds the strange robot sitting under a tree. When Ken asks who it is, the robot is startled and flips over. After a while, the robot introduces itself as Tang, but it has no idea where it came from and seems to have lost its memory. Ken also reveals his name, and Tang begins to repeat what he says in broken Japanese. Following this, Ken takes the robot to a nearby scrapyard to dispose of it. The owner says that he will strip the parts and sell it, so Ken decides to leave it there. As he walks away, Tang repeatedly calls out his name, but he ignores him and continues on his way. However, the robot immediately escapes the scrapyard and begins following him. Later, Emi is at home when she gets a call from the hospital where Ken was supposed to interview for an intern position yesterday. To her shock, she learns that he never showed up at all. At this moment, Ken arrives at the house, followed by Tang. The robot curiously examines the photos in the living room and starts taking several tissues from the table. It must be attracted to Emi. Bad Tang. Meanwhile, an enraged Emi confronts Ken about why he didn't attend the job interview yesterday, to which he casually responds that he forgot. He tells her not to worry about the money because they have his father's inheritance, but this only frustrates Emi further, and she expresses how tired she is of his immature attitude. In her rage, she grabs an antique clock from the table and smashes it on the ground. This deeply hurts Ken, as the clock was a gift from his late father. However, Emi tells him it's time to grow up and move on from what happened. She then kicks Ken out of the house, and the loyal robot follows him as well. But it's pocketing the photo of Emi, and it will use those tissues later. Later, we see the two of them at a bus stop, and Ken is very worried about his situation. As he ponders what to do next, he notices some sort of liquid leaking from Tang. A curious Ken then opens the robot's hatch and discovers Atobot Systems written inside. It turns out this is the name of the company, which is the country's top Android manufacturer. After searching the company's website, Ken discovers that they are now offering new robots in exchange for old ones. He then comes up with an idea and decides to exchange Tang for a better robot that can help with housework. He believes that if he gifts this to Emi, she will forgive him and take him back again, and he can go back to playing COD and peeing in bottles. Following this, the two fly to Fukuoka, where the headquarters of Atobot Systems is located. On the plane, a child sitting diagonally in front of Ken throws sweets at him. The latter tells him to stop, but the child continues his mischievous behavior. Enraged, Ken calls him a brat, and Tang repeats the phrase over and over again. This creates an awkward situation, and Ken gets angry at the robot. He calls it a piece of garbage and threatens to throw it away, but his words only make the situation worse as the annoyed robot ends up letting out steam from its head. In the following scene, they arrive at the Atobot office, where Ken tries to exchange Tang for one of the latest models. However, the receptionist informs him that the robot is not part of their system and only contains some parts from their company. She apologizes and explains that they are unable to process the exchange. Meanwhile, a man named Shinji is giving a tour of the facility to some children. When these kids spot Tang, they quickly surround it and take a picture. They seem to be fascinated by the robot, and Tang shows his compassionate side by rescuing a ladybug that's about to be stepped on. Witnessing this, Shinji is impressed, and it turns out he's one of the chief robot designers at Atobot. He requests permission to examine the robot, and Ken agrees. Shinji then leads them to his office, and he finds a glass tube filled with yellow fluid inside Tang. He notices that the tube has a small crack, causing the liquid to leak. Shinji realizes it is Tang's fuel and uses first aid to temporarily fix it. However, he warns Ken that if the fluid runs out, the robot will break down. He also observes that Tang is highly intelligent and appears to experience a range of emotions, almost like a human. Shinji emphasizes that the robot is very special and urges Ken to take care of it. Meanwhile, we notice that someone is watching them through Tang's camera. on a monitor. Next, Shinji talks about his friend Atsuki Rin, who is a robotics expert. He reveals that she lives in Shenzhen, China, and urges Ken to visit her as it is the only way to fix Tang. Our hero is annoyed as he doesn't want to travel that far, but when Shinji explains that it is the only way to save the robot, he reluctantly agrees. A few hours later, two mysterious men arrive at the Adobit office and demand Tang's location from Shinji. They seem dangerous, so a terrified Shinji ends up revealing the information. Meanwhile, we see Ken and Tang landing in Shenzhen. They visit Atsuki the next day, and she appears to be delighted to see them. She then warmly hugs Tang, saying she has been eagerly waiting to see the robot. While Atsuki and Ken are talking, Tang notices a remote-controlled car in the distance and pursues it. However, it turns out to be a trap, as the mysterious duo locks the robot in their van before driving off. When the adults notice this, they rush after the vehicle but are unable to keep up with it. Fortunately, Atsuki manages to throw her ID card with a GPS tracker into the van. We then notice that someone is monitoring the situation again with the robot's camera. In the evening, Ken and Atsuki follow the GPS tracker and arrive in the front of a warehouse. Moments later, Ken suddenly receives a call from Emi. She tells him that she can't babysit him anymore and admits that his absence has made her feel a lot better. She claims that since it is his parents' house, she will leave instead. Ken is taken aback by her unexpected attitude and feels distraught. However, he respects her decision and chooses to let her go. After hanging up, we see that Emi isn't happy with her decision and breaks down in tears. He was so good at video games. Meanwhile, the warehouse door suddenly opens, so Ken brushes off his emotions and enters with Atsuki. They notice the two kidnappers lounging around and heading upstairs to grab some beers. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ken and Atsuki quickly grab Tang and prepare to leave, but moments later, a man named Dr. Kato appears, revealing himself to be the kidnapper's boss. He stops them from leaving and proceeds to inspect Tang's components. He immediately recognizes the components and mutters to himself that Professor Baba must have created them. Shortly after, Kato's two henchmen arrive downstairs and capture Tang. Ken claims that he doesn't need the trashy robot anyway and was trying to get rid of it. Hearing this, Tang becomes enraged and begins releasing steam from its body just as it did on the plane. This causes the two henchmen to become confused and they let the robot go. It turns out that this was all Ken's plan to cause a commotion, and he and Atsuki quickly begin fighting the kidnappers. In the end, Atsuki steals a taser gun from one of the henchmen and knocks him out. She then points the gun at the remaining two and urges Ken to run away with the robot. After this, Ken escapes the warehouse with Tang, but he notices that the robot's body is leaking. He then receives a video call from an unregistered number. When he picks it up, it turns out to be Professor Baba, who is the creator of Tang. Baba is extremely overjoyed to see the robot and addresses him as James. Tang is so much better. He thanks Ken for taking care of his child and invites them to come to Miyakojima Island. He also reveals that this robot has the power to change the world and promises to fix it. In the following scene, Ken and Tang arrive at Miyakojima Island and sit down to admire the beautiful scenery. During this time, Ken opens up to the robot about his traumatic past, revealing that he wanted to be a doctor and once worked as a medical intern. However, one day, his father had an unfortunate accident and ended up in a hospital room. Since all the doctors were out, the nurses relied on Ken and asked what they should do, but he was so terrified that he simply froze, unable to respond. A doctor eventually arrived an hour later, but by this time, Dad had already passed away. In the present, Ken tells Tang that since that day, he has been unable to trust himself and has stopped working completely. He describes himself as a loser and has only disappointed his wife over the years. Hearing this, Tang sympathizes with him and does a cheerful dance to lift his spirits, which amuses Ken. Shortly after, the duo arrives at Baba's house, where the professor greets them warmly. He thanks Ken for bringing James home and reveals that the robot has been missing for years after an accident in a lab. Baba replaces the tube in Tang's hatch with a new one, explaining that the contents are bioethanol fuel derived from nearby sugarcane. However, Tang doesn't seem happy to see the professor and tries to hide behind Ken for protection. The latter knows that he is not in a position to take the robot and proceeds to leave. Tang clings to his feet and begs him to take it home with him, but Ken ignores it with a heavy heart and walks away. After walking for a while, Ken meets Dr. Kato, who is on his way to the professor's house. He becomes worried when he discovers that Ken has handed Tang over to Baba. Kato then begins to recount an accident that occurred 5 years ago. He reveals that he once used to work with Baba on the James series, which was a military robot project. During a shooting training session, one of the robots developed a sense of fear and began to panic before massacring everyone. It turns out that the robot had developed emotions, which Baba saw as a break breakthrough in artificial intelligence. He wanted to keep this achievement for himself, so he removed the Euro chip from James and attached it to another robot he created. After that, he burned the lab and ran away from there. Kato reveals that they have been searching for the professor for years to arrest him. Upon hearing all this, a worried Ken takes Kato's car and rushes to save his friend. Back in the house, Baba is trying to extract the Euro chip from Tang, but the terrified robot runs away from him. Ken arrives there soon after and he goes straight inside the lab. He manages to find Tang, and the two attempt to flee, but Baba quickly closes all the doors using his computer system. At this moment, Kato also arrives, but he's stuck outside and can't get into the lab. Following this, Baba informs Ken that he has been watching him through the robot's camera the entire time. He calls him a loser for being stuck in the past and unable to provide for his family. He then reveals his evil plan of using the robot's intelligence to become the world's most powerful man. Afterward, the professor approaches Tang with a hatchet, but Ken steps in his way. Baba wonders why Ken is helping a robot who is nothing more than a machine, but Ken argues that Tang is his friend. The professor doesn't like this answer and attacks him with a robotic arm, but Ken and Tang work together to snatch it. In the end, Ken strikes the old man with the same arm and knocks him unconscious. But just when it seems the danger has been averted, a heavy cupboard falls nearby and Tang is crushed underneath it. Ken rushes to save the robot, but its fuel is leaking, rendering it unable to move. Ken tries changing the fuel tube, but Tang still doesn't wake up. Realizing he can't do this alone, he video calls Kato, and the latter instructs him to check if the cable leading to the battery is connected. The cord is broken, so Ken grabs a nearby tool to fix it. Kato then directs him to connect the core unit next. There are two sockets, and Ken asks which one to use, but Kato says only Baba knows this. He warns that if he fails, there will be a short circuit, and Tang will be destroyed. This leaves Ken in a dire situation, and he wonders whether he should go through with it or not. The memory of his father's surgery floods back, but Ken gathers all his courage and ends up selecting a random socket. His guess turns out to be correct, and the robot soon begins to wake up, but it appears to have lost all its memories and introduces itself as James. A distraught Ken tells the robot that its name is Tang and recounts the story of how they met and ended up in this situation. Surprisingly, this brings back Tang's memories, indicating that it can feel emotions. I guess that's how that doesn't make sense. It then finally calls Ken by his name and says that he loves him. The man is overjoyed to hear this and responds that he loves Tang too. In the next scene, several cops arrive at the house and arrest Professor Baba. Ken then heads home with Tang and finds his wife, who is about to leave. Ken notices that she has fixed his dad's antique clock, and this makes him very happy. He now wants to stop her, but he's too scared to say anything. Therefore, Tang plays a recorded message of Ken, saying that he will become a doctor again and move on from what happened in the past. He expresses his determination to be a better person and to win his wife back. Upon hearing all this, Simi feels very emotional and decides to forgive her husband. Ken also tearfully apologizes for everything and promises that he will become a better husband for her. The movie then ends with the couple sharing a passionate kiss after they cover Tang's eyes with a cloth. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.